Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to the Falcoholic Live's Falcons at Texans post-game special. I'm, of course, your host, Kevin Knight, flying solo today. I assume because everyone else is too inebriated or too depressed to come on the air, but, I understand their plight better than most. So I'm going to be here to talk to you through this game, which... I pretty much, about midway through the third quarter, ran out of synonyms for bad for this one. So, yeah, I don't have any creative ones left for you guys. I thought about, going to thesaurus.com or something for more ways to describe how bad this game was, and I didn't have a chance. So, if you guys have any creative synonyms for that, please throw those in the chat. I will read off some of the best ones. But, on a day when the offense had some struggles and, they did manage to score the most points they had all year. They got into the 30s, 32, which is about what we would expect from a team this talented, right? They gave up 53 points on defense, which is just ridiculous. I mean, that is obviously, 7 of those being that final pick 6, which was just insult to injury. Yeah, I mean, that's really bad. That's like a catastrophically bad day for the defense. And, early in the season, it was kind of iffy. We saw some encouraging signs, and then we saw some less encouraging signs since basically the Colts game. And it's continued to get worse. It has not gotten better. It has gotten worse, and that's where we're at. Now in Week 5, the defense allowing 53 points and I think over 500 yards, right? 500 yards, folks. I'm gonna pull up the stats because this is a doozy game. So Deshaun Watson, 426 yards, 28 of 33, 5 touchdowns. I mean, that's obviously bad. Will Fuller, I believe, had a career day, either in number of receptions or overall yardage. 14 catches for 217 yards and 3 touchdowns. Some guy named Darren Fells also caught 2 touchdowns, so there's that. All right, let's see here. The team looked terrible. That's true. We're gonna get to that. I got to build up to the rant. I need a few minutes to get in, to the rant here. But I don't believe the Falcons had a single sack on defense, so that they did not. And the Texans had given up 18 sacks over the first 4 games, which, of course, averages out to over 4 a game. So the fact that you can't get a single sack against that offensive line is a pretty big indictment of your defense, particularly when, according to some of the advanced metrics, the Falcons' pass rush has a pretty high win rate overall in terms of, how many passes, how much they win their individual matchups, but they haven't been able to get the quarterback on the ground. And tonight, that was certainly due in part to Deshaun Watson's mobility. But in weeks past, particularly against guys like Jacoby Brissett and Mariota last week, they're not contesting any throws with the corners. I mean, the quarterback is able to just dump it off and pick up giant chunks of yardage, so there's no need for them to hold on to the ball. Deshaun Watson was able to just kind of sidestep folks and, make it look easy, break out of the pass rush. There was very little gap integrity in terms of guys that were supposed to be, pass rushing in lanes. There was none of that. They were just kind of all mad scrambling to get to the quarterback, which is, of course, not a great strategy when you're going up against a quarterback who's going to scramble on you and break off big runs, which, Deshaun is certainly capable of doing and did in this game. So that was bad. It's I'm warming up to this, but I mean, let's not talk about the Matt Ryan interception because that, I believe, was just a miscommunication on the route to Hooper. Hooper didn't look like he was prepared at all for that ball to be thrown, which is, I think, maybe more on him than Ryan. And at that point, Matt Ryan is desperately trying to rally the team and get anything when they're down 2 scores with a few minutes left in the game. So, that you have to take shots in that situation. I don't really think that was Matt Ryan's fault. I think overall Matt Ryan actually had a pretty good game. I mean, there was not really a whole lot he could do. He was constantly under pressure. The offensive line, this might have been the worst game of the year for the offensive line. It was pretty tough. And when you've got your third string right guard, Wes Schweitzer, going up against J.J. Watt and just getting dunked on like almost every play, that's not going to be great. Obviously Caleb McGarry did struggle as well against J.J. Watt. That's not entirely surprising for a rookie right tackle. The offense really wasn't the problem. There's still a lot of things that I take, issue to with the offense, and we'll get to those, but that they were not the culprits today. That the defense is the one who's the subject of my ire. How does Matt Ryan get... Like, what do you guys want Matt Ryan to do here, okay? Like, he threw for over 300 yards. He was on target. That throw to Calvin Ridley was beautiful. Like, I don't understand this obsession with wanting to blame Ryan for the problems of this team. What are you going to do? Like, Matt Ryan, since 2016, has been a top 3 quarterback by pretty much every metric. The whole team is a dumpster fire this year, Matt Ryan included. I think he's played about as well as you could expect, but... In this game, I thought he took care of the football well. I thought that last interception was more on Hooper than him. So if you want to get mad at Ryan, get mad at him for those first couple of games this year where, some of those interceptions were very bad. They were just bad decisions. But I don't know why people are trying to make this about Matt Ryan. It really has nothing to do with Ryan. If anything, it has to do more with the offensive line and the play calling and all that. And if you haven't... read my article last week where I dove into some of the schematic and personnel issues with the offense, the way Dirk Cutter is deploying stuff. Definitely check that out. It's called The Falcons Must Deploy Their Weapons More Effectively. I broke down a lot of stats there. And in regards to that article, there were some positive signs today. Like, I think, maybe Cutter read it. I don't know. That'd be nice. Hopefully he didn't need to read it to realize these issues. But, they did deploy a lot of 11 personnel today. I believe more than they have in weeks past. I don't have the total snap counts yet. They should be coming out soon, but it did look like they were running more 11 personnel sets. It looked like Calvin Ridley, Julio, and Sanu were on the field more together. They were more involved in the offense, but it didn't necessarily translate to insane production because of the pass rush of the Texans. And the other thing I did like was that it did seem like there was a little bit more of a willingness to run out of 11 personnel, because that was a big issue with the offense. Of course, that they were passing 85% of the time out of 11 and only running 15%. They did seem like they were willing to run more out of 11, which is a step in the right direction. But the problem was that the running game just couldn't get anything going. Devontae Freeman, 11 carries for 30 yards. That's just a waste of time. He did have that one really, really nice run, and he did have some nice catches. He's still definitely a quality contributor in the passing game. Ito Smith, I thought, looked a little bit better, but he still only managed 3.8 yards per carry on 5 touches. That wasn't great either. And then probably the most embarrassing play of the day was that Sanu Wildcat play on 2nd and 16. I believe it was 2nd and 16. They ran a Wildcat play. Like, what is the best case scenario for that play? Like, Sanu picks up 6 yards? Like, that, to me, just showed that Cutter was just picking plays at random, it seemed like, because why the hell would you run Wildcat on 2nd and 16 when you're not picking up those yards unless that play... I mean, he's either going to score a touchdown or they're not picking up 16 yards. That's basically how that play goes. It's pretty bad. Obviously there were some issues with the offense that I kind of touched on, the offensive line being the big one. Hopefully Jamon Brown can come back because Wes Schweitzer is going to get victimized by top-level talent. We've seen it year after year. If the Falcons have to go into the playoffs or, playoffs is funny to talk about that now, but, 2017, he couldn't stand up to the elite level competition. Last year, whenever Schweitzer had to come up against guys that were just clearly some of the better talent in the NFL, he can't handle those level players. He's a backup level player, and he's, serviceable at that spot, but that's about all we can expect from him. And he got just ghosted by J.J. Watt multiple times today. I mean, it was bad. It was real bad. I agree totally with Solaire and a lot of you guys that Cutter's play calling is just, it's really bad. it's boring. It's predictable. There's very little pre-snap motion, almost no play action, which against a team like the Texans who's coming at you with blitzes and things like that, you're not running any play action to keep them off balance, to keep them questioning what's going on. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me at all. It just seems like Cutter has decided that the problem with the offense is that the Shanahan concepts, those are the problems. So he's ditched the pre-snap motion. He's ditched the creative route combos and the rub routes, we'll call them, because if you execute them right, they're not a pick route. Those are gone. The route combos are gone. The tight end leak outs are gone. Play action, mostly gone. I mean, it's embarrassing, honestly. It's sad. So that's where we're at with the offense. They still managed to score 32 points with this vanilla-ass scheme, this joke that we're seeing out there, because the Falcons do legitimately have a ton of talent. Like, it's that good. The talent's that good that they can score 30-plus points on a league average defense altogether in the Texans, because their guys are just better than the other players. Even if you're not helping them at all, they can still score points. And this is more like what we used to see from Cutter back when he was with the Falcons in 2012. They would go out and score, not necessarily because the offense was coordinated so effectively. It's because they had prime Roddy, prime Julio, and Tony Gonzalez, who was still playing at a very high level, and that's just three weapons that most teams simply cannot cover effectively at all. And we're seeing it this year that it's not Cutter who's responsible for the offense's production. It is the players. It is Matt Ryan. It's this level of talent that's holding and propping up his scheme and making it look like it's competent. And really, it's just disappointing. I mean, it's mediocre. It's vanilla. It's predictable. He's not a modern offensive coordinator. And that's not how he was raised. That's not his schemes. That's not what he was taught. So I don't know why we would expect anything else from him. And it's abundantly clear to me that the Falcons have to go out and get a modern offensive mind. I mean, you've got this talent. You've seen what you can do with lesser talent with Kyle Shanahan in here. Matt Ryan can basically run any offense that you put on his plate if you give him a year to learn it. So that's basically where we're at. We need an offensive head coach. We need a young, modern mind. I mean, I guess the guy doesn't have to be young. He just has to have a modern offensive mind. Like Gary Kubiak, for instance, I would be satisfied with, because we know he's going to come in here and run a modern offense. He's going to use those West Coast concepts. He's going to use those creative routes. He's going to do all those things. That's fine. I know we've talked about Lincoln Riley and stuff like that. That would be nice. But the real issue, of course, is the defense. I mean, when your offense scores 32, you should be winning the game. You should win the game 9 times out of 10 if you have a competent defense, and the Falcons don't have anything approaching competence on defense at this point. I don't know why they thought playing Cyprien was a good idea. He looked lost every time he was on the field, took terrible angles. Like, he just clearly wasn't ready to play yet, so that's a big coaching mistake to put him out there when he's not ready. He clearly wasn't. He doesn't offer anything that Ishmael doesn't, so I don't know why you even needed to trade for him in the first place, other than maybe wanting to get Duke Riley off your roster, which I guess I sympathize with that. But Duke Riley hasn't even had a chance to play this year, so he's clearly not the cause of your issues. And I mean, just the team looked totally lost. The secondary was clueless about who to cover, what they were doing. I think a lot of times they just got beat by Watson and his receivers, and some of that is bound to happen unless you're an elite secondary, and the Falcons are not, clearly. I think Isaiah Oliver has lost his confidence. I think he's gotten beaten repeatedly to the point where he just doesn't trust what he's supposed to be doing anymore. He looks totally lost. He doesn't know where he's supposed to be, and obviously Oliver hasn't played well. Like, that's partially on him, but I don't think that they put him in any position whatsoever to succeed. I think they threw him into the fire. They told him he was going to line up on this side and he was going to cover whoever he had to cover, and he just got victimized by smarter offensive minds. He got victimized by bad matchups against players like Will Fuller, who are very, very fast and elusive. Oliver, needs to press guys, needs to get up on them. He would have been a better matchup for Hopkins, obviously. Hopkins was going to give him his share of lumps because Hopkins is an amazing receiver, but there's just no willingness to kind of bend this scheme to the players you have. I think Isaiah Oliver has potential. He's struggled enormously this year. There's no way to get around that. But I don't think he's been done any favors by this defensive scheme, which seems to be victimized every single week now. And, it was victimized by Jacoby Brissett for a pretty good day on his part. It was then victimized by Marcus Mariota, who was his best game of the year. The Titans receivers hadn't even caught a touchdown pass prior to that game. And then you see what happens when this defense goes up against a quarterback who's actually good, and it gets just roasted because Deshaun Watson is good, in case you don't know. He's a very good quarterback, and that's what I expect now to see when the Falcons play a good quarterback and a good offense. They're going to get roasted because the defensive scheme is nonsensical. I mean, honestly, I just don't know what to say about this defense. It's really bad. It's worse than last year, and they don't have an injury excuse. Obviously Keanu Neal's a big loss, but it's not like last year where all the defensive leaders got taken out and it was just Deion Jones in the second half of the season was the only guy left. It's not like that. I mean, they lost Neal, sure, but the rest of the guys are there. The defensive line is at full strength, and they can't get a sack against a team averaging 4.5 sacks a game, something like that. It's real bad. I mean, it's real bad. And I do think that the talent is not playing as it should. I think the perfect example of what I'm trying to get at, and basically my takeaway for you guys. And I apologize that I'm not getting to as much of the chat as I would like to, since I have to keep talking. I can't answer as many questions and stare at the chat while I'm trying to talk to you guys. But I will try to get to some of your comments as well. So do keep throwing those up there. I'll try. So I do think that the scheme is the issue here at its core. And I do think that the players are not executing properly. Clearly, it's not working on a lot of levels. But I think we've seen that the players are good enough to at least be passable. I mean, against the Eagles, I think we saw a scheme that was much more aggressive. We saw the corners playing a lot more aggressively on their matchups. And we saw, with Carson Wentz not getting a lot of easy dump-off passes and stuff like that, the pass rush actually had time to get home. Even though Carson Wentz escaped a lot of sacks, they were able to sack him, I think, 3 or 4 times in that game. That was the best the defense looked all year. I think it was because of that aggression. I think this team feeds off of that aggressive energy, and when they're playing passive football, when they're playing 5 yards off, when they're not contesting throws and all that stuff, that's just not... I don't think the team responds to that on a mental level, and I think that what we're seeing here is that Quinn is coaching games now not to lose instead of coaching to win. Against the Eagles, they were going all out. They're coaching to win that game. This is a hated opponent, a rival, someone that they'd lost to a bunch of times. The team wanted to go out there and prove that they could beat the Eagles. And they did. Obviously it was close. I think they thoroughly outplayed the Eagles in that game, even though, the end score ended up being a little close for comfort. But the aggression that we saw was better. And then since then, they haven't played with that aggression ever again, which is puzzling to me when you're going against quarterbacks like Brissett and Mariota, guys that aren't really known for being able to beat you deep or known for putting up tons of yards. I don't know why you're playing such a passive coverage style defense against these guys that aren't to be feared. I mean, when you play that passive defense, that soft zone, that constant, cover 2, that type of thing, it's basically sending the signal that you're afraid of your opponent, that you're afraid of what they're capable of doing to you. So you need to allow them these free completions so that they don't go after these long balls. And as we've seen, the Falcons can't they can't protect the deep balls, and they can't, since they're giving up all these free passes over the middle and stuff like that, they're not able to really capitalize on what the defense should be doing, which is tackling and doing that sort of thing. So it seems like you're not getting any of what you need to be getting out of this scheme. If you're not, if you're going to play this deep coverage and play off and all this, you need to be preventing the big plays, and they're not. So why not play aggressively? Why not contest some throws, try to cause turnovers, and do that more often? Why not, use Oliver in the scheme that he's supposed to be in, which is playing a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage, getting up on guys, using his size to his advantage. Like, Oliver can't use his size when he has to play 8 yards off somebody. He can't get his hands on the ball if he has to try to click and close. Like, and he's not an explosive athlete either. Like, he's not going to be able to take a few steps of a drop and then break on the ball and make a play, on these quick receivers. Like, Trufant can do that a little bit. That's more his game, but you can't just you can't draft a matchup corner like Oliver and then deploy him like a kind of jack-of-all-trades guy like Trufant. Like, that's a big mistake because he's not the same guy. He's not as savvy as Trufant. He's not as athletic as Trufant, but he does have the trump card of having great size and incredible length, and you can use that effectively in the NFL. And I still maintain that I think Oliver can be effective if deployed properly, but if he's not deployed properly, you're going to see what's happened, and now he's been poorly used to the extent where I think he just has had his confidence destroyed and is lost on the field, and it's really sad to see any player like that, and that's where we're at with Oliver, sadly. Trufant sucks. I mean, Trufant did get beat today, but I don't know how you could watch. I don't know how you could watch the Falcons defense and come away with the idea that like Trufant's bad or like this Trufant's bad or Ricardo Allen's bad or all this when there's very little pressure being generated. There's not a single sack in the game. Like I think it's a systematic issue because I think the pieces can come together to at least be an average defense. I mean, maybe not as aggressive as top 10 like I think some of us were hoping coming into the season, but it's a schematic issue when you're not pressuring the quarterback, you're not getting any sacks, and the opposing quarterback is going 28 of 33 or 16 of 16 in the case of Jacoby Brissett, or Marcus Mariota, dicing you up when you have, like, as much as we might like to pretend that the Falcons players are that bad, they're not that bad. They're not that bad. And that's just the truth of it. And it's really embarrassing. I'm sure it's embarrassing for the players too. And, I wonder if part of it is that the team has lost confidence in Quinn's scheme and ability to coach, because when you lose confidence, obviously you don't play up to your potential either. That's very hard for us as outsiders to determine, but I think that we are at that point. James Rogers, I think I kind of touched on your point there. I mean, I do think that Quinn is in danger of losing the locker room entirely if he hasn't already. I think that may have already happened. Like I said, I mean, I'm not an insider. I don't actually go to the locker room regularly. I mean, I am going to be covering a game in person before Thanksgiving and then another one before Christmas, so I'll try to get the feel of the locker room at that point. But by then we might be talking about not having Quinn as our head coach because he's been fired, so that might be too late for us to get a real read on the locker room. But Vlad, I see your question about Eric Bieniemy. I mean, I don't mind him necessarily. I don't really know his record that well. I'd have to kind of look into it more. But anyone that's going to bring like a modern twist to this offense and make the offense the front and center, because I'm tired of pretending that the defense is going to be a strength of the team and that we just need a defensive coach in here to turn this defense around. The Falcons are going to play great defense. Like, no, like we're just deluding ourselves if we're thinking that. Like this offense has to be the engine of the team because, newsflash, you win with offense in the NFL today. Look at the Chiefs. Like, the Chiefs do not have a good defense. It's middling at best, middling on its best days. But the defense plays aggressively and they create some turnovers. And guess what? When you have a really, really good offense, you can capitalize on a few turnovers and just outscore your opponent. Just flat out. You don't need a great defense to win in the NFL. We've seen that time and time again. And that's the way the NFL is going too. And I think, we need to see Arthur Blank really commit to that kind of change, and also just to the continuity of having an offensive head coach. You don't have to worry about that guy getting poached if you have a great season, which is what's happened, what happened with Shanahan. And we've talked about this before. What if it had been, Shanahan was the head coach and Quinn was the defensive coordinator, and Quinn got poached, after a strong finish to that season, we'd still have Shanahan running the offense, and I think that we probably would have had more success over that time period. Despite the fact that it was Shanahan who cost us the Super Bowl, I think we'd all probably be happier with him, coming back and taking another shot at it. I think we would have maybe had another opportunity if he were here. But, Soler, the Mike McCarthy thing. You want me to get you want me to get into Mike McCarthy? I mean, no. If they bring in Mike McCarthy, they haven't learned anything. I mean, that's like hiring Mike Smith again. We have to cut it out with these retreads, like these guys that got fired because they weren't good enough because their offense was too antiquated. Like, that's exactly what Mike McCarthy is. He's Dirk Cutter. Like, Mike McCarthy is Dirk Cutter. Like, he's an old offensive mind who wants to run a vanilla scheme, go out there and beat his opponent with his talent, and not add anything to your offense. So if you're not going to add anything to the offense, why am I hiring you? Like, if we're just going to go out there and run vanilla route concepts every play, do we even need an offensive coordinator? We should just run 11 personnel and let Matt Ryan pick between 5 plays Madden style, and we'll just carve up teams with our top receivers if that's all we're going to do. It's a waste of time. Hold on. I do need a second to take a breath here. Hold on. All right. Yeah, I mean, Lincoln Riley, that's my top choice because I do like his offensive mind. I think he's a brilliant offensive mind. I think he would really modernize this offense. But you're absolutely right to be somewhat concerned about, his lack of NFL experience, and what that would be like for a first-time coach coming into the NFL. I mean, that is a risk, certainly. That is something that, could be an issue. I still think he offers this team the best chance. I mean, there are no sure things when you go to hire head coaches, so let's get that straight. But I think swinging for the fences with a hire like Lincoln Riley, who we think can really take this offense into the future, could be a long-term guy to stay here. And best case scenario, I think you could really make the case that that's a tremendous hire. And so I guess to me that kind of outweighs some of the possible negatives of, not having any NFL experience. And in truth, we don't know how he'll be as an NFL head coach, but I'm willing to kind of overlook that just for the potential that he offers. I mean, look at all the quarterbacks he's made into stars. I mean, it seems like every year he's making another one into a top 5 pick. Imagine what he could do if he's handed this tremendous offense. Which when I think all the offensive line pieces are healthy, this is just a tremendous offense from top to bottom. We could see even more investment on that side of the ball next year potentially. If they do go after Riley, I would expect, in fact, that they might go for even more investment on offense to try to make this one of the best units in the league, bar none. I'm fine with that. And then if you do go after someone like Lincoln Riley, I would say that you go for like a veteran defensive coordinator. Like I've mentioned it before, that if Vic Fangio were to get one and done to Denver, I would be all over that hire. I think Fangio would take this defense and immediately make it play better. I think he could coax the top 15 year out of this defense without too much problem. I would love if this team just fully embraces the suck, like one of you said. If they embrace the suck and just get like a top 4 pick, and add Chase Young, add a top-tier defensive playmaker, add some more offensive weapons because Sanu's probably not going to be here next year. Maybe add probably a day 2 center, to back up Alex Mack and kind of groom behind him. I think that's like Lincoln Riley and Vic Fangio would be just a tremendous combo because you have a guy in Fangio who has a lot of NFL experience combined with a modern offensive mind like Riley, a young rising star. I think that's a perfect pairing. That's really unlikely, I think, in my opinion, because I don't know that Denver's going to fire Fangio after one bad year. That doesn't usually seem to be their MO. And then obviously luring Lincoln Riley away from Oklahoma is a whole other question entirely. I think the Falcons have the talent to do it because this is not your typical rebuilding team. This isn't a dumpster fire that he's getting a chance to inherit. This is a team that should be better, that has the talent to be better, that he can kind of come in, put his stamp on, and compete immediately. Like he's not in the situation where he's going to have to go through some bad years before he can really compete. And to coaches, that matters, because if you have to put several bad years of NFL coaching on your resume, quote unquote, because your roster is really bad to start, that matters. Like, if Riley comes in, takes over the team, and they go 9-7 his first year, 10-6 the next year or whatever, instead of going 5-11, 6-10, and 7-9 or whatever, that will help his reputation no matter what happens in the long term. Getting those wins early in his career, that can buoy a coach big time. And I think the Falcons have obviously have the resources to get some kind of mega deal done if that was what was necessary. But that's my top choice. I'm willing to definitely talk about other guys, but I know there's they're not going to draft a quarterback. I wouldn't be shocked if they drafted like a late round quarterback, although I do think Benkert is a guy with a lot of potential as a backup. But there's just no situation where you're moving on from Matt Ryan. Like, I'm not even going to deal with the skill related, questions, because you guys know my thoughts on Matt Ryan. Like, I'm a Matt Ryan defender. I'm going to stand for him. I don't think any of these issues are his. My opinion is that he needs to clean up the turnovers, but otherwise he's fine. We've probably got another good 5 years of Ryan, I would say, before we have to really start, asking ourselves if we need to take another quarterback in terms of his age. But if the Falcons get the number 1 overall pick, they're trading it. They're going to trade that pick for some serious capital to someone who wants a quarterback, cash that in and have a great draft and go from there. They're probably not going to end up with the number 1 pick, because I don't think, despite how bad they've looked, that they're the worst team in the NFL. But I don't think top 5 is out of the question. Not at all. Chase Young would be great. I'd be into that. No Jim Harbaugh. Let's stay away from that. It's I don't care. I want Tua. If you want Tua, you should probably go, be a fan of whatever team that drafts him, because the Falcons aren't going to draft a quarterback. Like, just financially, there's no way they can get out of Matt Ryan's contract. No way at all to get out of his contract. They can't trade him because of the signing bonus. Like, there's no way. You can't. So, don't go down that road. It's not going to work. And that's just kind of how it is. We definitely need to have a conversation about Dan Quinn getting fired now, because I think it's a very legit possibility. I think that we could see it sooner rather than later if this trajectory continues, because they've gotten worse every week. Week 3 was bad, but they rallied, and it was like, oh, well, maybe they could have won that game if the defense made a stop. And then, week 4 came along, and they got trounced by the Titans at home. That was bad. That was a step back. And then they go on the road to the Texans and just get the doors blown off of them. Despite a pretty good offensive performance, they weren't even really in contention late in the game. And that's the 3rd straight week that they've fallen into double-digit deficits. I think since Quinn has now taken the mantle of the defense onto him, he says, I'm the defensive coordinator. He's got no one else to scapegoat. They can't be like, all right, we need to fire our defensive coordinator, because the defense is really bad. No, he is the one to blame. It is his defense. So I think if they have another train wreck game, he could be gone next week. I don't think they're going to fire him this week just because it's a road trip. They're probably going to stay on the road until after Arizona. If they get trounced by Arizona next week, sure, he could be gone for sure. And I think if they don't win another game before the bye, he's absolutely gone at the bye. But I don't even know if just winning one game is going to be enough at this point. I think that he has put some really, really bad football on tape. And, I think that a lot of it is schematic. I think a lot of it is effort. I think he's lost the team. I think his sloganeering and his brotherhood stuff has just fallen stale. I think the team has kind of figured out that it's nonsense. Like, he doesn't actually know how to prepare. He's not good at game planning for his opponent. That was all Shanahan when he was here. And Dirk Cutter too. You can't squander this level of talent and expect to stick around. And that's basically where I'm at on him. All right. If you guys don't mind, we do appreciate it if you guys could throw us a like and subscribe. If you aren't already doing those things, we do appreciate that. It helps the channel in a big way. I certainly appreciate it. All of our guys appreciate it. And those metrics do help us out, and we appreciate it. I know we had almost 250 viewers today. That's awesome. I'll take a few more questions from you guys before I get out of here, but we'll be wrapping up shortly. But yeah, if you don't mind the like and subscribe, we do appreciate that. Is Quinn gone before the Saints game? I mean, possibly, yeah. Like I said, if he doesn't win another game before the bye, he's gone almost certainly during the bye week. I think if he wins only one game and it's like really close, or if they just continue to look really, really bad, he's probably going to get fired before the bye or during the bye. It's bad. Scott Frost. I mean, look, I was a big Scott Frost fan when he was at UCF. I'm definitely a UCF fan, but Frost has not been able to do anything at Nebraska. I don't know what's going on there, but whatever he was doing at UCF, he seems to have lost it. That Nebraska team is just not very good. It hasn't been good while he's been there. So I don't really know that you can make him your head coach. After he was doing his thing at UCF and he was on fire, I thought that was a dark horse candidate to get an offensive coordinator position, but I don't think the buzz is there anymore. But at the same time, like, if I had the choice of Scott Frost or Mike McCarthy, I would take Scott Frost a million times. I would do that in a heartbeat, because at least we're trying to go in a modern direction with this team. We're trying to, invigorate the offense with some interesting concepts and that sort of thing. I would vastly prefer that. Kirby Smart, I don't know, I don't really know too much about Kirby Smart. I believe he's a defensive coach, right? I mean, I could be wrong about that, but I don't want another defensive head coach. I mean, if he wants to be the defensive coordinator, sure, that's fine. But yeah, I mean, I think they need an offensive coach. Do I think Michael Smith? Do I think Dimitroff gets fired? I do think that's probably the more interesting question, because it would seem like it would be impossible for Dimitroff to survive again now that he's had 2 of his head coaching hires fired. But it also seems like Blank trusts Dimitroff a lot, that he really likes Dimitroff, that he kind of trusts him to bring in talent. And I maintain that I don't think the talent is the real issue here. I do think it is the scheme in a lot of ways. Obviously, there's more to it than just that, but I don't think the talent level is responsible for the abysmal play we're seeing. I think the talent level might be holding this team back from being like an elite defense or a top 10 defense, something like that. But there's no reason they should be, allowing 50-something points a game. That's bad. So yeah, that's a big question. I don't really know the answer to yet. So we'll have to see what Blank wants to do there. It wouldn't shock me either way, to be honest with you. But as long as Dimitroff can hire the right guy for the job for head coach, then I'm cool with it. But so far he's 0 of 2 with his head coaching hires. So we will see. All right, last one. Bobby Petrino. Okay, yeah. Falcons fan extraordinaire. If Quinn is gone, who takes over for the rest of the season? I do think it's probably obviously the first instinct would be Dirk Cutter, right? But I think it's probably not going to be Cutter, because I think it'll be Quinn and Cutter fired probably at the same time. If Cutter's not fired, it'll be Cutter. Otherwise, it'll probably be like Raheem Morris. He has head coaching experience. Bob Sutton, the game management coach, I think he's an assistant head coach as well. I think Bob Sutton could probably take over. It doesn't really matter, to be honest with you, who takes over. I don't think it's going to be good. Like at that point, if they're firing Quinn, it's the season's probably over. But yeah, I mean, it would be probably Cutter if he doesn't get fired, then Raheem Morris, then maybe someone like Bob Sutton. One of those 3 guys would be my guess. Yeah, Robert Kelly, no running game. Time to play Ollison or give him a chance. I don't think it's really the running backs. Honestly, I think it's the scheme. I don't think that the blocking has been there. I think the blocking scheme has been poor. I honestly think it's the lack of play action. I think they could be running a lot more effectively if they were incorporating play action, but they're not. So teams are not afraid of the fakes. They're not hesitating. The offense is just too predictable in general, and it's making it harder for literally both sides. Like, it's making it harder for the passing game and the running game because of that. And that's Cutter. It's all Cutter. Can we get Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson to give an inspirational speech to the players? You know what, Marcus Maynard? I'm not even sure Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson could fire this team up at this point. That would be cool. I mean, I'd love to see the video of that, but would I ever trade Julio Jones, Kylo the Poodle? I don't think it's possible now with the contract, so that's obviously one big negative against it. At the same time, I would not personally, because he's my favorite player of all time, and I personally couldn't stomach seeing him in another team's uniform. I mean, I think there are some arguments, possibly around strategically, if a team offers you 3 firsts for Julio, is it worth it? And especially as he gets towards the tail end of his career, maybe those calculuses start making sense, but there's too many reasons why it wouldn't work, and the fan in me just couldn't do it. So that's where kind of I stand there. We need Gordon Ramsay, yeah, we need Gordon Ramsay, or who was that one guy that told Rashid Hageman he wasn't good enough to be an asshole? I can't remember, but that was true. Whatever that was. Yeah. So yeah, I know you guys have asked about like Gary Kubiak. I would be interested in. Lincoln Riley. I'd be interested in. There are other names out there that I need to do more research on, but those are 2 that I would immediately go to, which means that we have no chance of hiring either of them. So I'm sorry, but that's kind of where we stand. I don't really have too much else to say about this. Don't really have too much else to say about this train wreck. I mean, obviously this was a really bad game. It was deflating. And it's sad because I think the offense got a little bit back on track, mostly because they just, I think, executed a little bit better. I think there were some minor improvements schematically and personnel-wise, but at the end of the day, I think it was just the players playing against an inferior defense. I think the Texans are more of an average to below average defense, where the Titans were definitely more of a top 10 unit. And you can see the difference, against a middling to bad defense. This vanilla scheme can work. You can line up and you can score 30-plus points with that. But against a good defense, it has no answers, and you just if you don't just totally out-talent your opponent, you're not getting anywhere with this scheme, and that's where we're at, and it's really sad. So, all right. It's bad. Before I get out of here, though, guys, do want to let you know that we do a show on Wednesdays as well at 8:10 p.m. Eastern. We have some guests on. That's a lot of fun. It's a little bit more analytical. We'll break down some of the numbers and stuff like that from the game, talk about next week's game, any injury news and all that stuff. That one's a lot of fun, so we'll be back on Wednesday for that. I'm, of course, Kevin Knight on Twitter at Falcoholic Kevin. You can give me a follow there if you want more takes in between the shows. The show is at Falcoholic Live, and like I said, if you don't mind, like and subscribe to the channel. Like the video, obviously, subscribe to the channel. Those metrics do help us out. Like I've said before, I don't really totally understand it. YouTube is kind of, shadowy with how they incorporate those numbers and how much they help here and there, but they do help somehow. And I know that the channel is approaching 1,000 subscribers, and that is awesome. So thank you guys so much for your following and your chat. J-Dub killing kicks. Sorry, I have to cover the team. I mean, I'm not sorry. It's fun for me. When they lose, it sucks a little, but I get to do the job that I really love, and I do love football, and I do love the Falcons even when they suck. So it's I could be a lot worse. It could be a lot worse at the end of the day. So I appreciate all you guys tuning in and enjoying the show, even though the game that we're talking about is trash. So that is my solace on Sunday nights. I definitely feel better after venting with you folks. So thank you very much for tuning in. Like I said, we will be back on Wednesday night to recap the show in a little more detail. We'll be getting Adnan back soon. I think this might be the last week without Adnan on Wednesdays. So we'll be getting him back soon. I know you guys love Adnan. So until then, guys, keep it tuned here, and we will enjoy your not last night of football. Enjoy the rest of the night of football. Try not to watch too many of the sports prognosticators, because the comments on this Falcons game are not going to be particularly positive, and they shouldn't be. So Until Wednesday, guys, I'm Kevin Knight. I will see you then. Have a great night, folks.